Today on the 10-12 podcast, myself, Andy, and Jamie will recap the games from Week 2 in the Big 12, including big come-from-behind wins by Kansas State, BYU, and Oklahoma State, and some blown lead losses, Cincinnati. Plus, John Kurtz joins the show to talk about the Big 12's new tiebreaker rules, 2-0 teams that we're not quite sure about, and more.
The NFL season is finally here, so make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. It gives you the most live NFL games all in one place, exactly what you need to make your Sundays more magical. Sign up today at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to the 10-12, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 Conference. We are the flagship show of the 10-12 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin. Thank you for joining us. Today, Week 2 is in the books. Just appreciate for a second that 2 of the 12-game season that you are guaranteed are gone and done, dead and dusted. The season goes by too fast. It's never long enough. Savor them, every one of them. Yes, even the losses, because there's so few we get. And there are now fewer than there were just 2 weeks ago. All right. Now that we've got that out of the way, wherever you're listening, please
beautiful.
Do us. Thank you.
I was going to say, I could do with a few less losses, though.
Wherever you are listening, please do us a favor. Leave 5 stars and a review. It really helps the show out. If you will write us a nice review and screen grab it and drop me a DM on Twitter, X, whatever, at 1012 Network, I will mail you a koozie and some stickers. I've been getting quite a few out this past week. So would love to get some positive reviews, especially on iTunes. If you are listening on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe. It really does help us out. Joining me as they
video?
do... No. The audio. I post the audio.
Oh my God.
Did you think I've been posting the video without telling you?
I don't think I've ever seen JSJ so scared.
Did you not know
boy.
we post the video? Yeah.
I had a heart attack.
Jamie, I would never use the video from this without telling you ahead of time.
I just thought you had told me and I forgot because that's how most of my life goes.
Fair.
My assumption is that it's on me.
Fair. Me is the vibe queen of the 1012 Network. Of course, she is also the voice of Iowa State women's basketball, Drake women's soccer, and volleyball. She is Jamie Steyer-Johnson.
Yeah, I'm a little worse for the wear looking, a lot better for the wear feeling, as the saying goes, the well-known saying that we all know and love. After a Cyhawk win, baby, I said I wouldn't even know what to do with myself if we won, and then I got to figure out what I would do with myself, which is like pop some champagne with some bros at a little get together.
Nice.
Good times.
Wait, actual
and now
champagne?
we enjoy for 2 weeks. Yeah, actual champagne.
Yeah,
one of my friends had a baby recently, and so someone had gifted her some champagne, and she was like, don't worry guys, I got this, and popped it in the freezer, and 45 minutes later, there we were, ready to roll. So
excellent. Popping bottles by the crib.
Rolling with that for 2 weeks through the bye.
I mean, if you're going to have a week 3 bye coming after a Cyhawk victory is, that's a good way.
Better than the alternative.
Yes,
Yeah, pretty
that
much.
is correct. That is correct. That other voice you hear, he is the host of our Kansas podcast here in the 1012 Network, the Rock Chalk podcast. He does not have a bye, nor was he popping champagne in celebration after this weekend. He is Andy Metz.
Yeah, that was quite the experience. I'm sure we'll talk more about it later.
We will. We will do that, Andy. Do you want just 10 seconds this week, or would you like a little bit extra time?
To be honest, I don't know that I need anything this week. I'd already got all my talking out at the over at the Rock Chalk Pod. So, but no, we will talk about the game as it comes up. But I'll just kind of go with the flow.
That's good. That's good. Flowing is good. Look, we have John Kurtz. Many of you should know him. Does a lot of great stuff covering the Big 12 and realignment over on YouTube, as well as for the 3 Ma podcast, which covers Kansas State and other Kansas-related things. So John Kurtz coming up for the second half hour. The way this show works now, we spend the first half hour running through everything as quickly as we can. It's a lot easier. I wish I had thought of this idea when we had 10 teams. Now that we have 16 teams, there's going to be some games that we don't spend as much time on that we probably could spend more time on, but, this is how I'm able to manage this show with 3 children and a full-time job now, and the non-mental capacity to actually watch 16 college football games with focus and pure full attention. That's also why we have a podcast. I keep saying podcast network, but one of our shows, Utah Utes Football Digest, is only on YouTube. It's a YouTube show that Joseph DeMora does. So it's not a podcast. It is a show. So we have shows for just about every Big 12 school in the conference, except for Colorado, Arizona, and TCU. So we've got you covered. You can get in-depth stuff from everybody, 1012network.com. But let's start this off by running through some of these games. I will say this was the tale of 2 halves weekend in the Big 12. Lots of blown first half leads for the Big 12. Lots of big second half comebacks in the Big 12. We'll start off with the first comeback win of the weekend. It came on Friday, BYU 18, SMU 15. This game was ridiculous. I mean, ridiculous. Turnovers. You get a turnover. You get a turnover. You get a turnover. You get a turnover. Everybody gets a turnover. Enjoy it. And it's just a lot. Shout out to the BYU defense and defense coordinator Jay Hill, who 8 days after having a heart attack coached a hell of a game in which his defense did not give up a touchdown. SMU did not score a touchdown. They also didn't pack their stadium either. BYU is down 9-7 at half, got down 12-7 early in the third quarter. But BYU came back. The defense forced 3 turnovers, held SMU to 3 of 16 on third down. Look, this was a good win for BYU over a, air quotes, because this is podcasting as a visual medium, ACC team. Okay. This is a good win. It's a win over the ACC. Yes, it does count as an ACC win on paper, right? Maybe not in hearts and minds, but it does on paper. And for one of the teams picked to finish in the bottom of the conference to get a win on the road and hold a team that was picked in the upper half of the ACC without a touchdown is a positive. For SMU, who's not in the Big 12, because you can have all the money in the world, it won't buy you wins or fans at the stands. So congrats to BYU on that one.
SMU was still locked in from beating Nebraska in volleyball on Tuesday. And that's what they're focused on, and that's fine, and I respect them for it.
See, and that's the kind of perspective we get from JSJ.
And that's the kind of perspective.
That's crazy. It was, in fact, at home. So, that was their outing for the week. They locked in. They made the right choice. And, is what it is.
All right. Win of the weekend. Go ahead and pour yourself another glass, Jamie. Iowa State 20, Iowa 19. Iowa dominated this game early, but as was the theme of the weekend for the Big 12, the second half is what mattered. Kyle Conradi, if I pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry, hits the 54-yard game winner with 5 seconds left to earn Matt Campbell just his second ever Cyhawk win. The Cyclones' last 3 wins over Iowa have all come in Iowa City. That is just a weird fact of life. Maybe you just move this game there and not play in Ames anymore. According to CBS Sports, this is the first time Iowa has blown a 13-plus point second-half lead since 2014 against Nebraska. One thing I want to note here. Through 2 weeks, we have got to talk about Jalen Noel as a first-team receiver in the Big 12 along Tetairoa McMillan. And we may have to have a conversation about McMillan because he still leads the Big 12 in receiving yards, but he did most of that work in week 1 and did next to nothing this week. Jalen Noel had 5 catches for 133 yards and a touchdown against Iowa. 2 of those catches and 40 yards came on the final drive that helped set up the game-winning field goal for the Cyclones. Through 2 weeks, he has 13 catches for 268 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like I said, he's second behind T-Mac in the Big 12. Jalen Noel is having himself a season as a receiver for Iowa State.
Yeah, Jalen came on really strong at the end of last year, especially. Like he looked solid, but I mean, he was a big part of the success to end the year. He's a heck of a receiver. When Iowa State opened things up a little bit, got throwing, certainly helped a lot. Man, that was an insane game. I sat before the game and I laid out exactly how I thought it would go because it's how it always goes, which is we make a massive mistake early. Iowa jumps out to a lead. They score a couple times in the first half. There's really not a whole lot of hope. Things feel really bad. We come out of the second half. We make a solid play. We feel a little bit better. We'll score maybe twice, get probably within 1 score, and then very quickly Iowa scores again. Or it comes down to the wire and we miss a field goal to win. Or Iowa makes a field goal to win. Like either there's a very slim chance, there's like a minute and a half of hope where you're within 1 score and then they shut the door, or it comes down to a field goal one way or the other. But in neither of those scenarios, generally, do we win. So it was real crazy to like watch it play out. First of all, pretty much exactly as I anticipated. But then to actually make it, to end it, having a kid that's a true freshman, didn't attempt a field goal last week. You missed the one to end the first half. Like, obviously, you're allowed to have jitters the first time that you do it, especially in that kind of situation. But, like, Iowa kid, by all indications, an awesome person. One of the people I was watching the game with is in Iowa State media, and she was like, "Wait, he was at one of the events I was working. He was so sweet. He was great." So, no, it's exciting. It's super fun. It's nice to have it coming home and off to a really strong start in the Cyhawk series. Hopefully got a couple more in us as the year goes on, especially coming up this Wednesday. We got volleyball, but yeah, no, super, super, super fun.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I was commiserating with the rest of the Wide Right Natty Light Discord during that game. And I actually made the comment of, why is it that El Asico always disappoints? And then it turned around. So I'm going to take at least a tiny shred of credit for jinxing or reverse jinxing the game. But no, I was sitting there. I was ready to turn it off because I was, paying attention to other things and trying to get articles up and trying to get ready for the Kansas game. And I'm glad I didn't, because, man, to watch Iowa State and the way that defense was able to slow down Iowa, and then the offense was able to get going, like, you just felt like, oh, is this actually going to happen? I'm not really sure. Like, this isn't supposed to happen. What is going on here? I still don't think Matt Campbell really cares too much about the non-conference. Like, that didn't come across to me as all of a sudden he was, had a huge focus on it. And like, this was just Iowa, their way to a loss here, which is absolutely fantastic to see, because everybody loves to make fun of Iowa.
I mean, our kids made the plays they needed to make. Like, It felt they opened up the playbook. There were very, very few opportunities to win the game, and they took all of them. And some of them were served up,
Right. But Iowa gave them the opportunities, and they capitalized, which is great to see.
And shout out to the Iowa State defense, who we always know is good. But, I mean, early in the game, you get the interception, and so Iowa takes over at the Iowa State 12. And you hold them to the field goal there, because it would have been 14-0. Like, it could have just gotten terrible. and the defense holds, and you hold them to a field goal again right before the half, right? They march all the way down to the Iowa State 3. They've got first and 10, and just it was a incredible job for the defense to be able to keep Iowa State in this game. And I had this game on. I was doing some other things while we were kind of keeping an eye on it. You get into the second half, as you mentioned, Jamie, like Iowa State finally finds the end zone, gets a score. It's 13-7 Iowa. You're like, okay. Iowa turns around and scores again. Now it's 19-7. And you're like, okay. Like this is just how this game goes. Like something good goes for Iowa State, and then Iowa State responds. And it's just,
I was like, oh, we got more in the tank.
I'm not used to seeing Iowa State looked in the first half in a lot of ways the way they usually look in this game. Iowa State in the second half looked different. I don't know what the halftime speech was. I don't know what Michael's secret sauce was. I don't know if Beck just started, like, everyone started sniffing his socks. I don't know what it was. I don't know. But they looked different in the second half, and it worked out. The face that Jamie is making right now is fantastic. That's what I was hoping for. At some point, we're going to have to put the video on YouTube because we can get y'all need to enjoy the Jamie, like, physical reactions to things that we say on here. Like, the vibes are great from what she says. You've got to see the non-verbal reactions that we get from JSJ in the show.
My husband gets such a kick out of it. He'll take pictures when he says something crazy because he knows I'm about to make an insane face.
It's gold. But props to Iowa State on this one. This was awesome. Now they've got a week to just enjoy it. Obviously, you're going to be preparing for the rest of the schedule. And I don't like to play the schedule game, but Arkansas State, Houston, Baylor, the next 3 up after your first bye week. Getting here, Iowa State, now they're ranked as well. Opportunity is there. Opportunity is there for Iowa State this season. All right, moving down the line as we have to. Arizona State 30, Mississippi State 23. I doubt most of you stayed up for this one. Cam Scattaboo ran for a career-high 262 yards. The Sun Devil defense scored for a second straight week, and Arizona State held off the SEC for a win in the desert. Scattaboo's 262 yards, second most in a single game at Arizona State. He dominated Mississippi State early and sealed the game late, converting on a key fourth down and 2 more first downs on Arizona State's final drive that iced the game. He now leads the Big 12 with 311 rushing yards so far through 2 weeks. Arizona State leads the nation in defensive touchdowns at 3. They got 2 in week 1 this week. Let's see how long that streak can keep going. Dominated the first half, hung in the second. I mean, we talk a lot this weekend about teams overcoming second half deficiencies. We're going to talk about teams who blew it in the first half. Arizona State hung on, nearly blew a 27-point lead. That's less than ideal, but luckily it offers a teachable moment without impacting the team's record negatively. I mean, Arizona State's at 2 wins already. This is, it's Arizona State. We've said it is not the worst team in the Big 12. I have been impressed from what I have seen through 2 weeks. Wyoming's bad. They lost to an FCS team this past weekend. Okay, we wondered if Wyoming was just bad. They're bad. They lost to Idaho. Mississippi State might not be good. I'm not doing this to play the, like, well, it's actually Arizona. Like, I'm loving this from Arizona State. Absolutely loving it. And I know that Ralph Amsden, the host of the Fortcast, our new Arizona State podcast, which drops each week, is loving it as well. Make sure that you check his show out. I'm loving this for Arizona State. When your last place team has this kind of start, that's a positive for the conference.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there, right? Where you're expecting to have a bad season and then you get some early optimism because of some awesome performances and you just embrace it. You just have fun with it while it lasts. Who knows how long it's going to last for Arizona State? They may end up being an actually decent team this year. Who knows? But all I know is that I'm going to enjoy it, until they play Kansas. But I'm going to enjoy it for Arizona State, and I know Arizona State fans are going to enjoy it as long as it lasts.
I love it. Arizona State's fun. And the uniforms they wore were fantastic. It was a great combo. put Sparky's face on the helmet on a regular basis. That's a great, fun logo to have on the side of the helmet. I love it. All right, Kansas State 34, Tulane 27. Speaking of comebacks, another one. Kansas State trailed 20-10 at the half and 27-20 early in the fourth quarter. The Kansas State defense really stepped up in the second half, holding Tulane to just one score in the second half. They scored on a fumble return to give Kansas State the lead, and they picked off the Tulane quarterback to seal the game. Now, look, there was some controversy stuff here in regards to how this game went in the second half and whether or not offensive pass interference should or shouldn't have been called. You saw a lot of it called on Oklahoma State this past weekend. I think there's some stuff going on with some of the refs and some of the things they're paying attention to. But look, you wanted to see maybe something more impressive from Kansas State, right? Because Tulane just lost their head coach. Their new head coach is really good. Like, props to them. They're playing. It's still a good team. I think for Kansas State to get into the situation they got into and find a way to fight out of it is a good thing. It's a good win. It's not a win everyone's going to get excited about because, again, Tulane, it's a new Tulane. This isn't a program with a long history of success, so it's not a program where you get the reputation. The reputation left with Willie Fritz. It's still a good win for Kansas State. 2-0 is a great start. We'll take it.
Yeah, I'm always like the what can you learn kind of person because, coach's kid, obviously. So when you're in a tough spot, when you get down big on the road and you have to battle back and you do so successfully, like if you can take the lessons from that, if you can learn things from that, if you can say, okay, we've been in a tough environment, we've been on the road, we've faced this, level of adversity or whatever, and you can be better because of it, then it's 100% worth it. Like ultimately, like you said, you come out with a win and there's more lessons to be learned there than by facing an extremely subpar team at home, but you have to learn the lessons from it. And so, I mean, I don't read too much into wins, especially early season ones, as far as like, oh, here's the massive issues, here's the like questions I have. And no, it's not just because I don't know very much about X's and O's at all. It's a philosophical thing, obviously. But no, I mean, there's a lot to be said for getting a road win, having to battle back. And now we just see if they get into a tough spot, if they get behind against a really good team, if they are struggling on the road, can they bounce back? And can you say, all right, well, that's probably a lesson you learned early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, this game gave anybody who wants to find nits to pick with Kansas State, gave them plenty of opportunities to do it, but also gave anybody who wants to, be huge supporters of them plenty of things to point to for them to overcome those sorts of issues. And look, there was a lot of discussion about the way that game ended. The way that I'll just phrase it is, yes, he caught it. No, I don't think he was in the end zone. And I thought the OPI was very questionable, but honestly, at that point, they still would have had to go out and make another play regardless. So anybody who's trying to say that Kansas State got handed that win, no, absolutely not. They had to earn it, give them big props for that. And so, I mean, that was an important win for them because I think a lot of people still at this point still overlook Tulane. That is a good team. To beat them on the road, no matter what the margin is a good win.
Their head coach who was at Troy, that guy can coach. Plain and simple. That guy can coach. And I would tell you his name, but it completely escaped my brain. I'm sorry.
Think you know the Brooks Ghost? Think again. Introducing the all-new, better-than-ever Ghost 16. Now with nitrogen-infused cushioning for lightweight, supreme softness that feels good every step, every street, every single day. So go ahead, take your daily joyride in the all-new nitrogen-infused Ghost 16. It'll turn your everyday miles into everyday endorphins. Let's run there. Head to brooksrunning.com to learn more.
Oklahoma State 39, Arkansas 31 in double overtime. I had a nice watch party here at my house. I was the only person in Oklahoma State gear. My wife tricked my three daughters with Arkansas cheerleading uniforms for all the little girls, and that swayed them. because I had at least 2 on my side, and then like,
She
oh,
fights
this
dirty.
is fun. She does. She fights to win. My wife don't ever get into board games and card games with my wife. She will cheat to beat you. She does not care. She would not be mad at me saying that. She would just go,
I say you got to respect the game.
yeah, no. Trust me. Like, look, there's things about my wife that I'm like, yeah, I love you. That's one of them. Look, she fought dirty, and I was the only one in orange. And at the end of the day, I was the only one happy. We had a great time. Great time. But yeah, my team won. This game was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. 4 combined turnovers, multiple turnovers on down, multiple costly offensive penalties. Oklahoma State probably should have put this one away before overtime. Then Alan Bowman decided to taunt the Arkansas sideline. 7th-year senior Alan Bowman decided to taunt the Arkansas sideline. And then there was a false start because the tight end got motioned, even though the defensive player for Arkansas did actually cross the line. It was called false start. It should have been offsides, and then Oklahoma State should have been able to just move the ball. Anywho, it went to OT. Both teams missed the field goal in the first overtime, and then Oklahoma State got the win. Oklahoma State was trailing in the third quarter, has trailed in the third quarter of 9 of their last 11 games. They have gone 8-3 in those games. Do not get into weird, wonky, ugly one-score games with Mike Gundy. He's going to beat you. Plain and simple. That game was just goofy, weird. At a certain point, I was like, does anybody want to win this game? Does anybody? Alan Bowman looked pretty good. Pretty good. Hold on. 2 last things. I'll wrap this up. Oklahoma State's got to figure out the run game. It is not working. It is not good. I don't blame the running backs. You have the most experienced offensive line in college football history. Figure it out. And also, shout out to Nick Martin and Trey Rucker. Linebacker Nick Martin, safety Trey Rucker for Oklahoma State. They played every defensive snap for the Cowboys on Saturday.
Yeah, this was a game that, I actually made a comment. I was like, I don't know that, or Oklahoma State did not look competitive early in this game. And then all of a sudden, something happened. I don't know what it was. But, there was tons of questions about this offense for a while. And then all of a sudden, they figured out. And I think a lot of it was sparked by the defense as opposed to the offense just figuring it out. But, again, as we saw with almost every single Big 12 team, there's questions. Like, there's plenty of things to look at and be like, wait a minute, what the heck is going on? But then there's also good things to point to. And surprisingly, it's more defenses than anything across the Big 12, it seems like, for the most part. So, it's going to be my big takeaway from this game is that it's going to be a hell of a Big 12 conference season.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad that game is over. That was fun, though. Utah 23, Baylor 12, our first Big 12 game. JK, not a conference game. I know Utah didn't get the cover after getting outscored 9-0 in the second half, and props to Baylor's defense, I guess, for shutting Utah out in the second half, though that was after Cam Rising left the game with an undisclosed injury to his throwing hand. He was seen on the sideline with 2 of his fingers taped together. Kyle Whittingham, of course, asked about this after the game, quote, "Just been told it's not real serious. You know what I know now. It wasn't real serious and can't tell you the exact description of what happened, but he may be back this week. We'll see." Hurt his fingers on his throwing hand. You tape that stuff up, make it numb, and go back out there, I guess. I don't know. They've got Utah State this week before a game against Oklahoma State in Stillwater in 2 weeks. As for Baylor, props to the defense, I guess. I saw a lot of Baylor fans excited about how the defense played. Offense was... I don't have a lot of takeaways from this game because I didn't have time to watch it, and I haven't gone back to watch clips of it. I don't have a lot of takeaways on this one.
Yeah, this was a game that I was not expecting to have a lot of takeaways just because I was expecting Utah to roll.
Yeah.
And then really the only thing to talk about in this one, I think, that was outside the ordinary is the injury to Cam Rising and how big of an issue is that going to be moving forward. But we don't know much. So yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of at a wait and see. You file this one away as a, could this be something in the next few weeks that we're all of a sudden going to point back to as a, hey, this might actually change the course of the season for the conference? Probably not, but we'll see.
All right. Let's run through a few of these quick. West Virginia 49, FCS Albany 14. Mountaineers got the ground game going to the tune of 305 yards and 4 touchdowns. Big one against lowercase P Pitt coming up this weekend, who we'll talk about here in a minute. UCF 45, Sam Houston 14. KJ Jefferson with a much improved performance versus week 1. 12 for 15 for 169 yards, another 9 carries, 450 yards. TCU 45, Long Island 0. TCU built a 31-0 halftime lead. And then they didn't have to do much. They will prepare for Big 12 play against UCF next weekend. Very exciting. More on that coming up. And Arizona 22, Northern Arizona 10. For second straight week, surprisingly close game at halftime with Arizona trailing 10-6, 16 unanswered in the second half, including a shutout allowed the Wildcats to escape with a win in a weird game in which T-Mac was held to, I believe it was like 2 catches for 11 yards total. I didn't get to watch any of this one. I followed as much as I could, and I'll just say weird. We'll move on. Let's run through some losses for the Big 12. Look, let's just knock this out. Colorado 10, Nebraska 28. Final score isn't really indicative of how this game actually was. The takeaway is Shedeur Sanders is getting called out after the game for the quote, "How many times did Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola get touched?" He was asked about the team's poor run game, quote, "How many times did Raiola get touched?" Shedeur Sanders always talking about the offensive line that his father bought and paid for that we all knew wasn't going to be very good, probably because you can't build an offensive line through the transfer portal. You have to develop one. They're never going to the lines, and Colorado's last place in the Big 12 in rushing. They have run for, through 2 games, a grand total of 75 yards. Houston has 96 through 2 games. Just saying. You have 75. I'm worried about OSU's rushing offense because they have 208. Colorado has 75 rushing yards on the season.
Yeah, this was a painful game to watch. I watched a little bit of it and then it was like, yeah, this isn't going to change.
Yeah. Texas Tech 16, Washington State 37. A 21-point loss isn't a lot, something to spend a lot of time on for Texas Tech. This one was oof. Tech actually outgained Wazoo 491-416, but 3 turnovers are going to doom you every time. 2 interceptions, a fumble. You also had 2 first half turnover on downs on your side of the 50. That's cute. Turnover on downs on a 4th and 11 from the opponent 49. Look, Taj Brooks didn't play in this game for Texas Tech. Obviously not ideal. That was bad. That was bad. It was a bad game from Texas Tech. Like, you can have all the yards in the world. You turn the ball over that much. You turn the ball over on downs that much. Like, I don't understand. In the first half of a game, when your defense did what the defense did last week, saying, "Yeah, it's our side of the 50. 4th down, let's go for it." Like, I'm all for 4th down and going for it more. That's fine. I understand all the analytics, but there is a point where it's like, what are we doing here, folks? No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to think about this Texas Tech team. Like, I expected quite a bit more from them in the first 2 games, and they've looked awful, and I don't really know why. So yeah, I mean, they've got to get it turned around quickly, and I'm just not convinced that they can.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know. The vibes are wearing off. They are. The Joey McGuire vibes are wearing off quickly. Because year 3 was the year I circled as like, this is going to be the year we'll find out if this is going to work. Through 2 games in year 3, it's not, but it's early. We'll see if they can turn things around. Houston 12, Oklahoma 16. I really hated this game for Houston fans because I've got a couple that will DM me the 1012 Network account on Twitter and chat. And it was like, why do I have hope? And I was like, I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that OU's offensive line is so bad that it's giving you hope that Houston has a chance in this game. And you had points late in the game where you're like, maybe they're going to, no. Safety. Yeah. All right. We're good here.
If you had told me the Oklahoma defense was going to win this game for them, I would have been shocked because I would have thought it wouldn't have mattered. So yeah, I mean, this was crazy. It's super, super, encouraging if you're a Houston fan that they could potentially do that. But
this is
only because
the worst kind of game
that Oklahoma is going to figure it out this year. So like, if it turns out that Oklahoma was just awful this year and you almost beat them and you missed your opportunity to do it, then yeah, you're just going to feel bad. But
this is the worst kind of game as a fan, where you have you're supposed to be dog walked. You have an opportunity to beat a team, especially like Oklahoma.
No, that's true. Moral victories suck.
And you are supposed to come away with a moral victory. Because
I've been through enough of them. I agree. They do suck. But hey, they're at least something.
Poorly Oklahoma. Like, Jamie, back me up here. Like, this is one of those games you're just like, I would rather have been dog walked than have to than have stayed in this game the whole time.
I don't want to deal with the hope. Like, that's
it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, it's like, okay, it feels like maybe you performed kind of at your peak and it still wasn't quite enough, and so it's like, are we actually going to build on that and continue to be better, or is that like as good as it gets? And at that point, I'd rather just be able to tune out sooner rather than later.
Agreed. Speaking of tuning things out,
better going forward, maybe, but
well, yeah, maybe this will be a bullet point on seeing Houston continue to rise. That would be great. I would love that, and then you can look back on this game a little bit more fondly at the end of the season. As a Big 12 fan, I was really hoping they'd pull it off. God, I was hoping they'd find a way to pull it off. That would have been incredible. I mean, awesome. You pitched a second half shutout. OU's offensive line is bad. It's bad. It's real bad. Speaking of year threes, Okay. Kansas 17, Illinois 23. Andy.
No, thank you.
This is one of those. Kansas had a second half lead, and you're like, all right, we're gonna put this game away now. We're gonna get this done.
Yeah. So
and Jalen Daniels threw 3 interceptions.
Well, yeah, but they had the lead after he threw those 3 interceptions. Honestly, the big question that we had going into this game, and I'll give you guys a little bit of sneak peek of what's over on the Rock Chalk podcast if you haven't listened to it yet. Was this a Jeff Grimes game plan issue, or was this a Jalen Daniels execution issue? And I think there was an argument to be made for either one, because Devin Neal was averaging 7.2 yards a carry, and somehow he only had 14 touches. Like, that's inexcusable when you get down to the end of the game, and you get a 7-yard rush and then 2 poorly thrown balls that give basically kill the last opportunity that you had to realistically score and win the game. So yeah, this is just the silver lining here is the fact that, look, you think based off of all the talent you have returning on offense that the offense is going to get better. It's just a matter of when do they pull it all together. You're super encouraged by how well the defense has been playing. But this is again, it's got to get better a lot quicker, and you've got to figure out, this game against UNLV coming up this next week is not a gimme by any means. And then Kansas has to go into, a Big 12 schedule that all of a sudden seems a little bit tougher than it was even just last week.
I forget who said that Jeff Grimes was a good hire. I can't remember who was on the show and said it. I'll have to look back. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And I got BYU fans are seeing this game going, that's what you get. We'll see. I just this was the whole concern with Kansas and losing Kotelnicki of the man is you see what Penn State, and I understand what happened to Penn State with Bowling Green, but
we'll see. The biggest thing that Kansas loses with Kotelnicki leaving is that Kotelnicki was very good at seeing what the defense was giving him and then adjusting his game plan to take full advantage of it. Didn't really see that from Kansas in this game. And so we'll see long-term what it looks like. But yeah, that's definitely one of those traits that is really hard to find, and Kansas is going to miss it.
The doozy of all doozies, speaking of blowing leads, Cincinnati was up 27 to 6 with 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Chase, Kitty, and I were texting back and forth about how good Brandon Sorsby was playing and how wrong we were about him. Then the Cincinnati defense let lowercase p Pitt go on 4 straight scoring drives, wrapping up 314 yards and 22 points to pull off the come-from-behind victory. Cincinnati's final 4 drives, they accrued 70 yards, 0 points. Sorsby went 4 for 8 for 37 yards and was sacked twice. Last year, Cincinnati built a big lead. Pitt scored a bunch late, but Cincinnati hung on to win. This year, Cincinnati did not hang on to win. That was I'm sorry, that was you had it. You had that game. The fact that you let the Pitt offense for the final quarter and a half rack up 314 yards and 22 points on you. It's just, Cincy. And I made Skyline chili dip this weekend, and y'all do that to me? I had my last can of Skyline chili, mixed it with cream cheese, sour cream, covered cheddar. No one liked it but me because they're all like, why is there cinnamon in this? And I get it, but I'm like, it's fine. I make that and I eat like the entire 9x9 pan of it by myself over a 2-day period. And y'all pull that crap? I ain't never need no Skyline chili again. Ain't gonna do it.
Phillip, tell us how you really feel.
Ain't gonna do it. You can't blow that game to Pitt. You cannot blow that.
No,
that
game. Was awful.
You cannot blow a 27-6 lead. Like to the Pitt offense. The Pitt offense.
That was another game that I turned off because I was like, oh, this game's over.
Yeah.
And then I looked back and it was the fourth quarter and they were only up by 6. And I was like, wait a minute, what the heck is going on here? It was bad.
It was
a very unpleasant surprise.
It's real bad. I'm like following along while I'm watching OSU, for the first half be awful. Just awful. But you know what's not awful is our good friends at Charlie Hustle. Because you're going to win every Saturday when you put on your favorite Charlie Hustle t-shirt, sweater, hoodie with your team's logo, emblem, or awesome throwback design that is on it. Why? Because Charlie Hustle makes excellent gear. Excellent vintage-inspired collegiate apparel with unique designs, super comfortable. That's the thing I always get the questions. Like, is it comfy? Yeah, it's comfy. I'm wearing my U of A Arizona Wildcat t-shirt right now. And I have this problem. My wife gets mad at me because I'll sometimes forget and leave on my nice t-shirts for bed because I'm comfortable, and so I forget to change them at midnight when I get done with this podcast and kind of to bed. Did you wear that? She'll wake up the next morning, and when someone asks you a rhetorical question, it's really annoying. Like, did you wear that to bed last night? And you want to be like, no, I just put it on now, and then I'm going to change again before I go to work. I'm going to have to remember not to wear this to bed so that I don't get that question in the morning. But it's going to be real hard to take it off because that's how comfortable Charlie Hustle's gear actually is, and it looks really cool. So here's what you want to do. You want to go to charliehustle.com. You want to shop from the more than 50 schools they have available, but especially all 16 Big 12 schools. Check out the great gear that they have available to you. If it's on sale, enjoy. If it's not on sale, use the promo code 101215, TEN1215, and get 15% off all non-sale items. Again, that's 101215, TEN1215 for 15% off all non-sale items. We love Charlie Hustle. They love us. They love the Big 12. We appreciate them sponsoring the entire network. We appreciate how much they love the Big 12 and how much care they put into putting out just great Big 12 gear. I got my Arizona shirt. I think my next, I need UCF gear. I need something UCF. I've decided that, and I've got to Charlie Hustle Vintage Made Fresh. I'm going to say that because now I'm going to talk about hats, and I have my very nice hat collection that I continue to build. That includes, I have a Kansas State hat, I have a TCU hat, I have obviously a bunch of Oklahoma State hats. I decided the next hat, like Big 12 hat I need is Arizona State, because I want Sparky. I want the full-bodied with his pitchfork / trident Arizona State logo because I think it's straight fire. It'd look good on a hat.
It would.
Thank you for saying something, because it's head nods are a great thing in an audio format. It's wonderful.
Exactly. I was shopping. I hadn't looked for a couple weeks. There's some new stuff under Iowa State, so.
What? So if Arizona State fans are like, no, I got you covered, you let me know. You send me a link. You can email us at 1012podcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at 1012network, 1012pod on the gram. Do the kids still call it the gram? Is it still the gram?
I don't speak the same language as kids anymore, so
I don't either. I used Riz as a joke to my wife the other day, and we laughed about it.
Ooh.
I used it both. It was like, I think I understand how it's used, but I also use it as a joke because I'm like, I can't
even ironically use their terminology because I lose so many brain cells every time I'm at work subbing and I try to understand what's being said. I'm sure people said the same thing when I was in school. I'm not like, doing any like kids these days things. I'm just saying that like I feel washed and I'm not that old and it's escalated really quickly.
I don't do kids these days, but I try very hard to remind myself to view everything in context, right? Everything requires context. For instance, when a single childless 20-something comes to work on Monday and is tired, I don't like internally or externally like verbally berate them because I'm like, I remember being single childless and in my 20s and still being tired. I understand there's a different kind of tired when you're
it's a completely different type of
40
tired.
and less than a month with 3 small kids, but like I don't want to be that guy. All right.
At BlueNile.com, you can find endless ways to make your moments sparkle. From classic and timeless jewelry gifts to creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. And right now, you can save up to 40% on fine jewelry and 25% on engagement ring settings during the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale, going on now. Go to BlueNile.com to shop the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale and save up to 40%. That's BlueNile.com.
JSJ, as always, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much. We're going to let you bounce and just keep sweating out all the champagne or finishing it off. I don't know if you brought a bottle home and you're still trying to finish that one after the win on Saturday. So
would have been a great idea. Yes, absolutely.
Next time something like that happens, you should just pop a bottle on the show. Because again, everyone understands what the sound of a cork pop is. So and that works in a podcast land. Obviously, we can't watch you do it, but everyone knows it's a sound effect. We're all very familiar.
We can watch in the theater of the mind.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So what is it about? Based off timelines, about 4 or 5 years from now, we can expect the next.
Love you, man.
Love you. 2 weeks. Enjoy it. All right, Jamie's out. Thank you, Jamie. And joining us now for the second half of the show.
Oh, Phillip. One of these days, Jamie is going to come up with a sick comeback.
We'll make it a visual show someday. I'm not kidding. Like, if you all think Jamie's good when it's just audio, video is even better. Joining us for the second half of the show. You know him. You love him. He covers the Big 12. He does a great job with realignment. He does a great job covering Kansas State as well. He is John Kurtz. John, welcome back to the 1012, sir.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Appreciate it. We're doing well. Just enjoying a wild and wacky weekend of Big 12 football in which we saw lots of second half comebacks and collapses across the conference. We've got a few topics to get to, but I will just off the top let you offer your quick thoughts on this weekend, week 2 in the Big 12.
Yeah, it gave me a lot more pause on like what I think the hierarchy of the league is. It chipped away at some of my, I guess, preconceived notions about where the league was and how things were structured, because I really felt like coming into the league, Oklahoma State, Utah, K-State, Kansas were the 4 best teams in the league, with a slight nod to Oklahoma State and Utah as the top 2. Now I come out of it saying, well, I mean, Oklahoma State's question marks have been pretty much the same each of the first 2 weeks. The defense and the offensive line, like not getting enough running game. That was really the case in this game against Arkansas. They give up 600 plus yards. Colin Oliver's arguably their best defender, and they're probably going to be without him for the rest of the year now. Utah, I mean, it's all about Cam Rising. They were dominating until Rising left. I know the injury doesn't appear to be too serious, but we've now seen what they are without him. If they do miss him for any extended period of time this year, and the offense didn't score once he left. So now I'm like, all right, I've got some questions about Utah when they were looking as solid as anybody before that. K-State through 2 games. I mean, I have questions about the consistency on offense, and now real questions about the defense after, I mean, there were guys running high school wide open for Tulane a lot of that game, 3 out of 4 quarters, I would say. And I think the idea was K-State would lean on the defense. Well, the offense kind of got up to speed and worked in new playmakers, new starting quarterback, new coordinator, all that. They've had a much better second half each of the first 2 games, but there are enough question marks all over the place there. I'm not exactly sure how I'm feeling about K-State. And then obviously Kansas loses. And I've long been of the opinion that I think Andy Kotelnicki was a huge piece of what was going on there. And I mean, this goes back like to 2022. I thought, like, I mean, this dude just schemes guys wide open. I feel like this is what's a lot of the magic behind what's happening here. And you could maybe say the same about Jason Bean too, but I thought Andy Kotelnicki, I feel like just turns these guys into stars because of what he does. And now I'm wondering if that theory is not pretty spot on after what we've seen from Jalen Daniels so far, because I wasn't really that impressed by him in week 1 either. So just have a lot of question marks based on everybody. And now I think Iowa State firmly entrenches themselves into the top tier with their win at Iowa after just a dreadful first half. So I think it's opened the door for that. And I'd even say it's opened the door for like a tier of kind of like why not us teams like BYU, UCF, TCU, hell, maybe even Arizona State after the first 2 weeks that they've had to look at this and be like, why can't we actually be in contention right now? So I just feel like it seems a lot more open after week 2.
Well, I know we want to talk about the tiebreaker, but let's transition from that to 2 of the questions we got. We have 9 of the 16 teams in the conference are currently 2-0. Utah, Arizona State, BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, and UCF. Of those teams, who do you feel like at 2-0? John, I'll let you go, and then Andy, I'll let you respond. Is a bit fraudulent. Is it's congratulations, you're 2-0, but it's not going to be something where we should be getting super excited about you.
Oh, it's tough because fraudulent seems so strong. Like, who do I have the most question mark? Because I go down the list. I was like looking at this. I'm like, I have question marks about literally almost everybody. Like, we haven't talked about Arizona, but their defense looked dreadful in week 1, and then their offense didn't do anything against Northern Arizona last week. So I don't know. Arizona State, they've been great, especially relative to expectation, but I don't think that they're going to be there at the end of the year in contention for a Big 12 title. So I hate to say you guys are like a fraudulent 2-0 because that's awesome, man. I mean, Kenny Dillingham deserves a lot of credit there. I guess, BYU, I'm thrilled for them to go beat SMU and shut SMU up after the offseason of yapping that they had after joining the ACC. But I still think BYU just has a lot of problems at quarterback. Like Jake Retzloff was kind of a disaster for a lot of that game. Did make some plays when they needed it, but I just think they don't have enough quarterback play to really truly be a contender there. So maybe that's an answer. And like TCU, I don't really fully believe in. So I just don't have, I know that's a little bit of a cop out. I don't have like a one team that I feel like is really fraudulent, but I can pick apart virtually every single one outside of, I think, Utah. My question mark there is just Cam Rising. Like, does he stay healthy and does he stay in there? I think they're the team that I would feel by far the best about if I knew that Rising was going to play the entire year.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about fraudulent, right? Like, I think you have to temper that based off of expectations. So like Arizona State and BYU, well, I don't think that they're going to use a 2-0 start to like go and compete for the Big 12 title. They are teams that I honestly was not even sure that they would necessarily have a win at this point, right? Because like we had real serious questions, and BYU was one of the teams that a lot of people were picking was going to get upset in week 1. So the fact that they're both 2-0, that's something to be celebrated. I don't feel like that's fraudulent at all because it's much better than we expected coming in. The only team, I think, when I look at them and I'm like, what they've done is extremely far below my expectations for this year, that is 2-0. because I think there's been a lot of teams that have had some pretty big issues, but they're not undefeated. Arizona is the one that jumps out to me. I expected Arizona to completely destroy both of the teams that they played. And there have been very serious, both offensive and defensive issues against teams that should have no business keeping it as close as they did. I'm wondering how long that's going to go for, but until Arizona gives me a standout performance, I have to wonder, is this the Arizona that we're actually going to see all year long, or are they just, for whatever reason, struggling at the beginning of the year?
I like the Arizona answer. I think Arizona last year was a bit more volatile than we kind of give them credit for. I think they were really good and well coached, but then brand new coaching staff, you lost a ton on defense. And so expectations were still high because of T-Mac and Noah Fafita. Like I said, T-Mac went 2 catches for 11 yards against Northern Arizona. It was super weird performance from him after a week 1 performance where it was like, all right, here's week 1 Blitnikoff's going to Tetaroa. And so it's an Arizona State or an Arizona team where you're just kind of like, okay, through 2 weeks, I don't know what my expectations to be. And now you've got back-to-back road games the next couple weeks against Kansas State and Utah. So I know there's a week off in between there, but I think we'll get answers. I mean, we're going to get answers for all the 2-0 teams fairly quickly, right? Arizona's got Kansas State next. Kansas State's got Arizona, right? We can have this conversation. Iowa State's the only one who we're not going to have to ask you questions about for a while because they're off next week, and then they get Arkansas State. So it's going to be interesting the next couple of weeks. We should find out. But I like the Arizona answer there. I asked this question. I think it's even as difficult as the first. 9 teams are 2-0, which leaves us with 7 teams who have at least 1 loss. Baylor, Cincinnati, Colorado, Kansas, Texas Tech, West Virginia, all 1-1. Houston, 0-2. Of the teams who have already suffered a loss, is there one among them where you go, yeah, it's all right. It doesn't concern me with this team.
The team that jumps out to me from that group, I mean, and it's just honestly the one that I look at from that group and I say this team I think can still absolutely contend for a Big 12 title would be Kansas. I think there's just enough infrastructure there from what they've built over the last couple of years and enough star power there on offense. Jeff Grimes, I've had my doubts about that from the start. I guess it kind of depends on who you ask in the conference. If you're talking to Baylor fans or BYU fans about what exactly he is as an offensive coordinator. But I mean, it does seem like a pretty easy fix to just hand the ball to Devin Neal some more, who's ripping off 8 yards a pop. I think they have enough star power there where they could definitely recover. I mean, I think that game torpedoes probably any shot of an at-large college football playoff bid, but it obviously does nothing to stop them from winning the Big 12 championship. So I think there's enough still in the tank for Kansas. The rest of everybody else, West Virginia, I started to come along a little bit more on the West Virginia hype train by the end of the offseason, but I started from a place of that felt pretty schedule-driven last year. And watching then Penn State really struggle to beat Bowling Green at home this weekend, I just am not getting great vibes on West Virginia. I think Tech is pretty cooked right now. Hell of an effort from Houston on Saturday, but they're Houston. Colorado, I'm not a Colorado over-the-top hater, but I've never thought they were much more than a 6-6 type team. So you start going down the rest of the list, I don't see anybody that has the upward mobility of a Kansas that's already lost a game.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at the fact that Kansas, their offense has been struggling, but it seems to be a couple players that are really kind of struggling to get going at the beginning of the year. And overall, you have to think that Jeff Grimes is going to gel with this, with this personnel and kind of figure it out at some point. Just with all the talent they have. The fact that Kansas defense has been playing as well as they have, and yes, I understand. Obviously, Lindenwood, you expect that, but I do think that Illinois' offense is actually a decent one. It's not, a world beater by any means, but it's at least a, middle of the road Big Ten type of offense, which should be actually decent this year. So you are definitely encouraged by the fact that the defense is the standout, group for Kansas at this point, and you think that the offense is going to get there. Obviously, like you said, I think this. Unless Illinois surprises a ton of people in the Big Ten this year, that does torpedo any chance of an at-large in the college football playoff. But at this point, you're just trying to win the conference. College football playoff would be nice, but I think at this point, Kansas is focused on just trying to win the conference and, do something that they've never done before. So yeah, I do think that that's kind of where they're at, and this doesn't change anything about what they think that they can do this year, especially since it happened in the non-conference and on the road.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think Kansas is a fair answer. Man, I part of me wants to say West Virginia because obviously Penn State is good. Now they struggled mightily against Bowling Green on Saturday, so that's not helping West Virginia's case, especially offensively. But it was week 1. It's a tough game. You just don't know. That's why week 3 against Pitt such a big deal, because don't know what to expect from a Pitt team that Cincinnati couldn't put away. So I would love for that answer to be West Virginia. I think the answer right now, I agree with you guys, is Kansas. I want to run through, before we look at next week's schedule, the tiebreaker rules the Big 12 put out. Obviously, normally tiebreaker rules are like, okay, cool, we have tiebreaker rules. But given how all of the things that happened last year with the tiebreaker and confusion about what the rules actually were, that eventually worked themselves out anyways. And Oklahoma State went to Arlington and other teams did not, but there was a point where we had some ties. The tiebreaker rules started getting drawn up. The Big 12 has put out new tiebreaker rules this season for the conference championship game. I will run through these as quickly as I can. A is the tied teams will be compared based off their head-to-head record during the season. So if that doesn't work, then B is the tied teams will be compared based on win percentage against all common conference opponents. Cool, we get 16 teams. Sometimes that can be hard. C, the tied teams will be compared based on win percentage against the next highest placed common opponent in the standings based on the record in all games played within the conference proceeding through the standings. D, the tied teams will be compared based on combined win percentage in conference games of conference opponents. Tied teams will be compared based on total number of wins in a 12-game season. Then the representative will be chosen based off highest ranking by Sport Source Analytics, team rating sport score metric, following the last weekend of the regular season games. And then G, we get all the way to the very bottom. The representative will be chosen by a coin toss.
A coin toss.
It doesn't say in the parking lot of a Whataburger, but that feels like it's probably where it should happen.
It absolutely is going to be in the parking lot of a Whataburger.
It seems appropriate, much to the chagrin of some of our newcomers whose Whataburgers are far away from their campuses. Do we have any issues with the new tiebreakers? Do we see any situations where we're going to have a mid-season debate and argument, and people from the mothership are going to have to hop out and be like, no, it's fine. You're all just misinterpreting the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I am not seeing anything glaring, and just doing a quick pass through of it when I got the email earlier this week, I was like, okay, I mean, honestly, the first thing I looked for and the first thing that stood out to me is I was like, well, it appears that they figured out how to download Grammarly and use Grammarly this time, because we don't have a blatant typo, just a weird comma that makes zero sense, at least that I saw. So that's a start. That's a good positive for the Big 12 there. Hopefully it's fine. I think this will be an issue, honestly, for all conferences, because they're getting so big and bloated now. And I think it's something that fans probably don't talk as much about as perhaps they should, is that this will, like, fan bases will be mad about this every year, I think, across college football, because you're going to wind up with ties, and it's always going to be about who's second in the league, obviously, like who the second team is that's getting into the conference championship game. And based on unbalanced scheduling, people are going to get really furious with a lot of this stuff. And then you have situations this year like K-State, Arizona, if one of them, if they will be involved in some sort of tiebreaker at the end of the year, they will have played each other, but in a non-conference game, so it's not actually counting in the conference standings. Like, there are a lot of really weird scenarios that could come up based on all of this. But I will say, first blush, this seems to me like a better effort than last year, and that they have at least learned something from that experience last year that was obviously a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest takeaway is that, hey, at least they got this figured out before conference play started. That seems to have been what the biggest issue was last year, was that we were getting rulings and interpretations, well after we had gotten fairly deep into the conference schedule. So, I definitely think that that's like the biggest positive to come out of this, is that, hey, they know what they actually want to do before we get to that point where it's really going to matter. So, Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that they have gotten that figured out and they let us all know up front, because I really don't want to deal with the backlash, when all of a sudden we're going to find out, in week 9 that, hey, everybody misinterpreted what those tiebreakers meant, and now you're going to have a bunch of pissed off fan bases.
Yeah, that was a fun week last season. Just a lot of fun. Unnecessary anger. It all worked itself out, but that was a fun week. All right, let's wrap this show up as we do every week. We're going to look to the weekend that is coming up. I think this is a fun weekend. I think it's a very fun schedule with a lot of out of conference, rivalry games. So let's break it down. And after I run through the list, I want each of you to give me the game that you are most excited about, must watch, have to see this weekend. The one rule is you cannot pick your team. So John, that means you can't pick Kansas State. Andy, of course, cannot pick Kansas. We start on Thursday night. Love it. Arizona State at Texas State. That's fun. Friday has Kansas hosting UNLV, and of course, Kansas State, Arizona at 7 o'clock on Fox. They're big Friday night games. On Saturday, we get Oklahoma State at Tulsa. There's a little out-of-conference rivalry. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Arizona, Kansas State, we're officially calling that the battle for the scratching post. Seems inappropriate since it's a battle of two Wildcat teams. And of course, it is a conference game that is an out-of-conference game. Yeah, I don't know. Also on Saturday, Cincinnati at Miami of Ohio, one of the final 2 games of this very long-running rivalry series that is going to be going on hiatus. Texas Tech's hosting North Texas. Not really a rivalry, but it is an in-state game, which is kind of fun. West Virginia at Pitt. That's a rivalry. Backyard brawl. Always fun. Utah at Utah State. In-state games. Always a good thing. Baylor hosting Air Force. Colorado State. Out-of-conference rivalry game. UCF and TCU, the first true Big 12 game of the season, and a first ever meeting between those two teams. As we've mentioned on the show before, we've got a lot of first time ever meetings between teams in the Big 12 this season and next. Houston Rice, rivalry game. BYU at Wyoming, because I don't know who put together BYU's non-conference for this season, but I'm not sure they actually like BYU, given you had road games at SMU and Wyoming. That is cruel. Andy, you can't pick Kansas UNLV, so what is the game you are keeping the closest eye on this weekend?
I mean, look, that BYU Wyoming game, like if you're going to pick a time to have them go on the road twice, like I guess this is okay to do it, right? You beat SMU and then going to a Wyoming team that looks awful. But no, I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to be a complete glutton for punishment of bad football and go with Colorado State to kind of figure out what Colorado actually is this year. That first matchup of undefeated Big 12 teams is interesting as well against UCF, TCU. But I'm going to be honest, 2 ranked teams, Arizona, Kansas State, they both have big questions. And I think that even though it doesn't count in conference standings, this is going to go a long way to us figuring out what these teams are and how the top of the Big 12 is potentially going to shake out this year. So it's hard for me to pick any other game. Even if I could pick Kansas UNLV, I probably would be picking Arizona, Kansas State.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I say here, and it's such a bummer to me that the Kansas game is on at the same time as the K-State game, because that game is really intriguing to me. This is kind of a receiving votes for me. I would have this as a runner-up, but to see, one, just how Kansas responds, and then two, UNLV has been really good so far this year. Obviously, we know what they did to Houston in week 1. I know Utah Tech, it's not impressing anybody, but UNLV scored 70 on Saturday, and they're a team that won 9 games last year. So you've also got the angle of the rematch from the bowl game and all of that. So there's a lot, I think, that I really want to find out of that game. I would also, backyard brawl is always great. Poor Cincinnati last week. Poor Cincinnati. But my answer is pretty definitively out of the rest of that, if I'm not taking K-State Arizona, is UCF TCU. Both of those teams to me are in that tier I talked about earlier, which is like, why not us? Like, we should be able to jump up into this group. I think especially UCF fans, I was hearing from a lot of UCF fans this week, like, man, hey, look at this. We've got the best rushing offense in the country. And they do by 29 yards. Like, they're 29 yards clear of the second best rushing offense in the country so far this year. KJ Jefferson, I know, looked shaky in week 1, but seemingly got his feet under him a little bit more last week. It's just UCF hasn't been tested at all. They played New Hampshire and Sam Houston. So TCU got pushed and got tested at Stanford. But are they ready to do it? Like, is Josh Hoover ready to do it consistently week in, week out in the Big 12? I definitely want to find out the answer to that. But that guy, has a whole bunch of 300 plus passing yard games already at a pretty early stage in his career. So combine that with, 24/7 talent composite, one of the best rosters in the Big 12. Like, I think TCU probably has a higher ceiling than people really think of or are talking about right now. So both of those two teams to me are really intriguing, and I'll be fascinated to see how that game plays out.
The one thing I will say really quick is that let's just hope that, Kansas UNLV is over at halftime. So that way, we can all enjoy a good Kansas win and then focus on Arizona and Kansas State.
I like that. No, UCF TCU, it's the first Big 12 game of the season, first conference game. It's a first ever meeting. There's 2-2-0 teams that we still have some questions about. Like, it's a 6:30 p.m. kickoff on Fox. Like, this could be a fun game. Like, because I have no idea what to expect from this game at all. Like, this could be a close and exciting game. This is the Big 12, folks. If I told you this is a preview of the Big 12 championship game in Arlington, you'd probably be like, there's no way. And I'd be like, let's go look back at preseason standings and who actually gets there every year. Like, nothing shocks me in the Big 12. So this could be a massive game that we're getting to watch, and we just don't know at this point. And I'm still really high on UCF, so I'm really interested to see, given who they've played, what they look like against the TCU team who struggled against Stanford but pulled it off, and blew out Long Island, who knows. So I think it's an exciting game. I love all these I gotta get used to that. P4, G5 out of conference rivalry games we've got. It's not one of them, but I'm really interested in Arizona at Texas State. With what we've seen from Arizona State at Texas State, what we've seen from Arizona State the first 2 weeks of the season, you go on the road to Texas State, because before the season started, I had that as an Arizona State loss. That was an L to me. With Arizona State's defense, they've lead the nation in scoring with 3 touchdowns. Texas State's offense is a lot of fun. Could this be a shootout? Can this get weird on a short week? I am very intrigued by this Thursday game between 2-0 teams in Arizona State and Texas State. Like, this could get fun, weird, ugly. I'm obviously UCF TCU. I'm really excited for this game on Thursday. I think this one could be a really fun weeknight game to put on and enjoy to the end.
No, I totally agree, man. Texas State, I was just looking at this, like, they beat UTSA 49-10 last week. Like, Texas State's legit. That is a good team. And Arizona State, I mean, they couldn't blow anybody out last year. They didn't beat anybody by more than 11. I know they gave up 20 unanswered at the end of the game last week, but they had Mississippi State down 30-3 after pummeling Wyoming. So, yeah, how real is this? And plus, I love the fact that it's going to be a primetime slot on a Thursday where you get a pretty big number, I imagine. I mean, obviously competing against the NFL is a little tricky, but a lot of people to watch Cam Scatterbo, who's been one of the most fun players in the Big 12 so far this year, and had just a phenomenal game. I think it was 262 yards rushing on Saturday, was the second best single game performance in Arizona State history. So that's good spotlight game for him, a guy who deserves it.
Yeah, I love it. Arizona, the 3 weeknight games we got for the Big 12 this week, I think they're fun. This isn't a wow weekend of games based off of matchups. But look, I love rivalry stuff. I love fun in-state rivalry stuff. I just think this is a weekend of games that make me go, I love college football. I know enough about all these little matchups to be excited. I have a reason to be excited about pretty much all of them. I mean, Baylor Air Force is such a weird game to me. Like, Baylor's playing Air Force at home. It's just an odd thing to see. And so why not be excited about I like this weekend. It's a fun weekend. I think Utah will blow out Utah State, but this is a fun little weekend before conference play really gets rolling in week 4.
This weekend is the reason that college football is so great, right? Because there are so many of these matchups that have all of these little meanings that you wouldn't necessarily know. And, it's not all the teams that are at the top of the standings or teams that are expected to be national title contenders, but the vast majorities are very compelling matchups because they have stakes that are unique to a college football type of thing as opposed to like the NFL.
Totally agree.
Totally a lot of bragging rights.
West Virginia Pitt, I'll just throw in that. I mean, West Virginia, I feel like at least got their sea legs probably back under them a little bit last week with the Albany game. I'm not convinced Pitt is great, but man, with Eli Holstein at quarterback, like The guy's thrown for 635 yards and 6 touchdowns so far this year. So, I mean, that could definitely give West Virginia problems based on what we saw in the Penn State game with Drew Aller, who last year did not look all that impressive. And it's just such an awesome rivalry game. I loved, was that 2 years ago that we got the backyard brawl to kick off the season? Like, that was just such an awesome spectacle to see that game coming back. And so I love getting a chance to see that game, and speaking of things that make college football great, like just the pure hatred that runs between those two fan bases and the rivalry that they have there. And massive, if we're talking about just storylines within the league, massive opportunity for West Virginia to be back level set maybe on expectations for the season. Because while I know they got very hyped up in the offseason, all the build up to the Penn State game, they definitely wanted to win it. But how many people truly thought West Virginia was going to win that game? Probably not many. So if you go take care of your rival, you win the backyard brawl, you're 2-1. I think that could have West Virginia fans and the team probably just feeling a lot better and a lot more like, all right, just wipe that all away. Let's go play conference football.
I will say right now, every single West Virginia fan that tags me on Twitter with the Emperor Palpatine, let the hate flow through you gif will get a retweet from me this week.
I love it. That's the energy. John, appreciate it, man. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. You do a ton, and so please take a couple minutes and plug it all. Where can everybody find all the great work you do covering college football and the Big 12 especially?
Yeah, I appreciate that. My new project has been the Big 12 newsletter, open for business. Of course, what we hear Brett Yormark say all the time. So if you want to get Big 12 news straight to your inbox, not have to wade through a Big 10 or an SEC spin or article, so often, I think that's what you get when you're getting college football news. Everybody views it through like the Power 2 lens. This is all about the Big 12, how it impacts the Big 12. Just go to ofbnews.com to subscribe and sign up to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, totally free, and come into your inbox multiple times per week. I'm on YouTube. It's just my name, JOHNKURTZ. Live shows Wednesday nights and Sunday nights. So would love to have you there. And if you're a K-State fan, I do the 3-Ma podcast with Derek Young and Cole Manbeck, which you can find anywhere you get your podcasts. So just search like EMA with a 3, just the 3-Ma podcast.
I am subscribed to the newsletter. It has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed what you've been putting out there. So always love, look, I love the Big 12. And so anyone who also loves Big 12 and does good work covering it, love to get on the show and shout out. So if you have not signed up for that newsletter, go and do so. I think you will enjoy it. Look, here's the deal. I have a lot of newsletters and I can't read every one, but I will sign up for them because every once in a while, someone's gonna be like, oh, I gotta read this. This is good. So give John's new newsletter a follow. John, as always, appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Everybody enjoy your week. Games start on Thursday. We've got picks coming out Thursday. We will talk to you all again then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.